My journey into the world of finance began on my 16th birthday. It was a crisp autumn morning when my father, David Chin, handed me an unusual gift, a leather-bound notebook filled with stock market basics and investment principles. Maya, he said, his eyes twinkling with enthusiasm, money isn't just about wealth. It's about understanding how the world works. As a senior investment analyst, Dad believed in teaching me about finance from an early age. Our modest living room often transformed into a classroom, with financial charts and graphs spread across the coffee table. Look at these patterns, he would say, pointing to the rising and falling lines. They tell stories about companies, about people's hopes and fears. My mother, Elizabeth, rarely shared our enthusiasm. David, she's just a teenager. Let her enjoy life, she'd say, barely looking up from her phone where she was constantly updating her social media profiles. Mom was obsessed with maintaining a perfect online image, chasing the next trending topic or social media challenge. The contrast between my parents was stark. While Dad taught me about compound interest and market analysis, Mom was busy building her following on various social platforms. Appearance is everything in today's world, Maya, she'd insist, trying to get me interested in her latest social media ventures. My sanctuary during these times was my grandfather George's Victorian-style house. As a retired securities firm executive, Grandpa had a wealth of knowledge that went beyond textbook learning. Every weekend, I'd escape to his study, a room filled with the smell of old books and leather chairs. The market is like a mirror of human nature, Grandpa would say, his voice carrying years of wisdom. It reflects our greed, our fears, our hopes. He taught me things that weren't in my father's notebook, the importance of ethics in finance, the responsibility that comes with managing money, and the power of patient investment. I was particularly intrigued by my grandfather's stories about market manipulation and financial fraud. The biggest threats in finance aren't always obvious, he'd explain, showing me news clippings from past scandals. Sometimes they come dressed in suits and smiles, promising impossible returns. One evening, Dad sat me down in our home office. Maya, I want to show you something special, he said, pulling up his investment portfolio. I've been managing a small account for you since you were born. It's time you learned how to handle it yourself. The account wasn't huge, but it represented my father's trust in me. We spent hours going through each investment, with Dad explaining his reasoning behind every decision. The key is to think long-term, he emphasized. Quick profits are tempting, but sustainable growth comes from patience and research. Meanwhile, my mother's world seemed to revolve around a different kind of investment, her social media presence. Look, Maya, she'd exclaim, showing me her latest viral post. This one got over 10,000 likes. The divide in our family grew more noticeable as I advanced in my financial education. During one of our weekend sessions, Grandpa gently addressed my concerns about Mom's social media obsession. Everyone seeks validation in their own way, he said wisely. Your mother chases likes, while we chase market gains. The important thing is to understand why we make the choices we do. Under Dad and Grandpa's guidance, I started making small trades with my account, learning from both successes and failures. Each decision was carefully logged in the leather notebook Dad had given me. Always keep records, Dad would remind me. Understanding why you made a decision is just as important as the decision itself. The dynamics in our family began to shift during my junior year. I noticed Dad looking more tired than usual, his face growing paler with each passing week. He tried to maintain our evening investment sessions, but his energy wasn't the same. Just working hard on a big project, he'd say whenever I expressed concern, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. My mother, absorbed in her growing social media influence, seemed oblivious to these changes. David, you should join me in one of my live streams, she'd suggest, her phone perpetually in hand. It could be good exposure for your investment advice. Dad would just shake his head gently, too exhausted to argue. Grandpa George noticed the changes too. During one of our weekend sessions, he paused unexpectedly. Maya, he said, his voice unusually serious, financial knowledge isn't just about making money. Sometimes, it's about protecting yourself and those you love. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. These are copies of all my important financial documents, including details about this house. I want you to keep them safe. When I asked why, he simply replied, because knowledge is power, and sometimes, we need power to protect what's right. Meanwhile, Dad's condition continued to deteriorate. One evening, as we were reviewing my investment portfolio, his hands trembled slightly while typing. Maya, he said softly, I need you to promise me something. He pulled up a new document, my college fund account. This is your future, he explained, showing me the details of the account he'd been building since my birth. No matter what happens, this money is for your education. Promise me you'll use it wisely. His intensity caught me off guard, but I promised, not realizing how significant this moment would become. Mother's reaction to Dad's declining health was to throw herself even more intensely into her social media presence. We need to think about our image, she'd say, carefully staging photos that showed our family in the best light. The disconnect between her curated online presence and our reality was striking. Looking back now, I realized that this period, my 16th year, was more than just financial education. It was preparation for a storm that none of us saw coming, a test of everything I'd learned about money, family, and justice. The principles that Dad and Grandpa taught me would soon be put to use in ways they never imagined, and the true value of their lessons would become crystal clear in the darkness that lay ahead. The diagnosis came 3 months after my 17th birthday. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The words hit our family like a thunderbolt, shattering our carefully constructed world. Dad's decline was brutal in its swiftness, leaving no time for proper goodbyes or life lessons. Keep studying the markets, Mia, he whispered during one of his lucid moments in the hospital. His once strong hands, now thin and pale, clutched mine. Promise me you'll be smart with the college fund. Don't let anyone. A coughing fit interrupted him, and he never finished that sentence. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and hollow condolences. Mother, ever conscious of appearances, orchestrated the perfect social media tribute, a carefully curated collection of family photos and heartfelt captions that garnered thousands of sympathetic responses. But behind her phone screen, she was already changing. The transformation began subtly. First, it was grief therapy through social media, daily posts about her journey as a young widow, each garnering more attention than the last. Then came the lifestyle change, new clothes, new hair, new friends. Mom's follower count exploded as she rebranded herself as a resilient single mother influencer. I retreated deeper into my financial studies, spending more time at Grandpa's house. The market became my refuge, numbers didn't lie, charts didn't pretend, and balance sheets didn't need social media validation. Grandpa watched me with growing concern as I buried myself in investment analysis. Maya, he said one evening, your father wanted you to understand finance, not hide in it. But I wasn't hiding, I was preparing. Something in my mother's behavior set off warning bells that my financial training had taught me to recognize. 6 months after Dad's death, Mom met Marcus Walker at a social media marketing convention. He was everything she aspired to be, successful, charismatic, with a massive online following. His investment advice channel had millions of subscribers, and his seminars sold out instantly. He's amazing, Maya. Mom gushed, showing me his profile. Look at these returns he promises his clients, 30% monthly. He says he has a special system. I felt my stomach tighten. Dad and Grandpa's warnings about impossible returns echoed in my mind. But Mother was beyond reason. Marcus swept into our lives like a whirlwind, bringing with him his daughter Jessica, a junior influencer with her own growing following. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Within months, they were engaged. We're going to be one big happy family, Mom announced, her eyes feverish with excitement. Jessica already calls me Mom, isn't that sweet? The way she emphasized Mom felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I hadn't heard her use that tone since Dad was alive. Jessica moved into my room a week before the wedding. At 15, she was already a master of social media manipulation, staging and reshooting simple moments until they were Instagram perfect. She transformed our shared space into a content creation studio, complete with ring lights and backdrop screens. You're so lucky to have a sister who understands modern business, Mom would say, watching Jessica film her latest investment advice video, scripts written by Marcus, of course. I bit my tongue, remembering Dad's lessons about penny stock schemes and pump-and-dump scams. The wedding was a social media spectacle. Live streamed to Marcus's followers, it featured sponsored content and affiliate links for everything from the flowers to the cake. Mom glowed with happiness, but I noticed Marcus's eyes constantly darting to his phone, checking engagement metrics even during the vows. It was during the reception that I overheard my first concrete evidence of trouble. Marcus was in the hallway, speaking quietly into his phone. Yes, the marriage gives us credibility. People trust family men. No, the stepdaughter won't be a problem. She's just a kid obsessed with old-school investment theories. I began documenting everything in Dad's leather notebook. Marcus's investment seminars promising impossible returns. The way client testimonials disappeared after a few months. Jessica's suspicious product endorsements for companies that didn't seem to exist. Grandpa noticed my growing unease. Your father's college fund is secure, he assured me. I made sure of that after he paused, his voice catching. But be careful, Maya. People like Marcus, they're good at finding ways to access money that's supposed to be protected. He was right. The attempt came 3 months after the wedding. Maya, sweetheart, Mom said during dinner, her voice honey sweet. Jessica's been accepted to an elite business program in Switzerland. We were thinking, since you're more interested in traditional investing, maybe you could share your college fund? Family helps family, right? I felt cold. That money was from Dad, I said quietly. He specifically set it aside for my education. Don't be selfish, Marcus interjected. Jessica has a real chance at social media stardom. That's where the future is, not in your outdated market analysis. Mom nodded eagerly. Think about the family brand we're building. Jessica's success would benefit everyone. I stayed silent, but that night, I called Grandpa. His voice was grim as I explained the situation. Come over tomorrow, he said. Bring your notebook. We need to talk about protective strategies. The next few months became a careful balancing act. While I maintained a facade of compliance at home, Grandpa and I worked on securing my financial future. He taught me how to document suspicious activities properly, explaining the importance of dates, times, and exact wordings. Your father knew something like this might happen, Grandpa revealed one afternoon, showing me additional paperwork Dad had prepared. The college fund is in an irrevocable trust. They can't touch it without your consent, and it becomes fully yours when you turn 18. Marcus's true nature began showing through his carefully crafted image. His investment seminars grew more aggressive, targeting vulnerable people with promises of quick wealth. It's all about the upsell, I overheard him telling Jessica. Get them emotional, make them think they're missing out, then hit them with the premium package. Jessica, eager to learn her father's tactics, started her own schemes. She began promoting questionable cryptocurrency investments to her teenage followers, using Dad's death to create emotional appeal. My stepsister's dad died because he stuck to old-fashioned investing, she'd say in her videos. Don't make the same mistake. The exploitation of Dad's memory was the final straw. That night, I confronted Mom in private. How can you let them use Dad's death for their scams? I demanded, showing her Jessica's videos. Her response chilled me. Oh, Maya, she sighed, not even looking up from her phone. You're just like your father, stuck in the past. Marcus and Jessica understand modern finance. Maybe if your father had listened to people like them, he could have afforded better treatment. The words hit me like physical blows. I retreated to my room, hands shaking as I documented the conversation in my notebook. The mother I knew was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Grandpa became my anchor in the storm. Keep your head clear, he advised. Document everything. Build your case. The truth has a way of coming to light. His words would prove prophetic, though not in the way either of us expected. As my 18th birthday approached, the pressure at home intensified. Marcus started leaving investment prospectuses on my desk, all for his high-risk, questionable schemes. Jessica accidentally mentioned my college fund in her live streams, hinting at upcoming family investments. Mom's transformation was complete. The woman who once packed my lunch with little notes of encouragement now barely acknowledged my existence unless it was for a family social media post. Smile, she'd command during forced family dinner photos. Our followers expect harmony. I focused on my studies and continued building my documentation. Every seminar advertisement, every suspicious post, every questionable transaction, all carefully noted and backed up. Dad and Grandpa's lessons about market manipulation were becoming real-world survival skills. The night before my 18th birthday, I overheard Marcus and Mom discussing their plans. Once we get access to her college fund, he was saying, we can finally launch the premium platform. The family angle will be perfect, trusting her inheritance to her new father's expertise. I lay awake that night, Dad's last words about the college fund echoing in my mind. Tomorrow, I would gain legal control of my inheritance. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. And thanks to Dad and Grandpa's lessons, I was ready. The call came on a Tuesday morning during my financial management class. Grandpa had suffered a massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. His last words, the nurse told me, were about protecting his granddaughter's future. I sat alone in the hospital corridor, my world crumbling for the second time. But this time was different. I wasn't the helpless teenager I'd been when Dad died. Years of financial training and careful documentation had prepared me for what was coming. Mom and Marcus arrived hours later, their faces arranged in perfect expressions of grief, already live-streaming their arrival at the hospital. Our followers need to share this journey, Mom explained, adjusting her camera angle. The performance made me sick. The real show began at the reading of the will. Marcus sat with an air of entitlement, already discussing renovation plans for Grandpa's house with his real estate contacts. Mom was busy planning a tribute series for her social media channels. Neither of them was prepared for what came next. To my beloved granddaughter, Maya Chen, I leave my entire estate, including my house at 1542 Oak Street and all associated assets. The lawyer's words hit like thunderbolts. Mom's carefully composed face cracked. Marcus's phone slipped from his hands. This is impossible, Mom shrieked, all thoughts of social media documentation forgotten. I'm his daughter. She's just a child. But Grandpa had been thorough. The will was ironclad, witnessed and notarized just months before his death. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had prepared me for this moment. Our weekend investment lessons had included detailed discussions about estate law, property rights, and asset protection. He'd made sure I understood every aspect of what was coming. Marcus recovered first, his investment scammer instincts kicking in. Maya, sweetheart, he began, using his seminar sales voice. Think about the family. We could turn this house into a content creation hub. Your grandfather would have wanted. My grandfather wanted me to protect what's mine. I cut him off, pulling out my leather notebook. Just like he wanted me to protect others from investment fraud. The color drained from his face as I opened the book, revealing years of documented evidence. Every suspicious transaction, every questionable seminar, every illegal scheme, it was all there. Dad had taught me about documentation, Grandpa had taught me about timing, and now I was ready to use both lessons. Let me show you what I've found, I continued, connecting my laptop to the lawyer's office projector. First, there's Marcus's exclusive investment club, promising 30% monthly returns through a secret trading algorithm. I pulled up archived screenshots of his webinars. Interesting how all the testimonials disappear after 3 months, right when people realize they've lost everything. Mom's social media perfectionist mask cracked completely. You've been spying on us? Your own family? Family? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call trying to steal my college fund? Or using Dad's death for marketing content? Each word was a calculated strike, backed by years of documented evidence. Jessica's illegal activities were next. Promoting unregistered securities to minors, selling counterfeit luxury goods through dummy corporations, tax evasion through multiple shell companies. I watched their faces as the evidence mounted. The SEC and IRS might find this interesting. Marcus attempted damage control. These are serious accusations, Maya. Think carefully about what you're doing to this family. His tone carried a threat, but I was prepared for that too. Oh, I have thought carefully. 4 years. I pulled up more documents. Like these records of your previous investment scams under different names. The ones that got shut down by regulators. Interesting how you never mentioned those in your success story videos. The next few days were chaos. Mom and Marcus tried every manipulation tactic they knew: threats, guilt trips, fake reconciliation attempts. Jessica launched a social media campaign painting me as an ungrateful daughter destroying her family out of jealousy. But I had learned from the best. Dad taught me analysis, Grandpa taught me strategy, and they had unknowingly taught me the power of social media manipulation. I waited for the perfect moment, then began my counterattack. First came the anonymous tips to financial regulators about Marcus's investment schemes. Then, carefully timed exposés about Jessica's counterfeit goods operation. Finally, a comprehensive document dump revealing their entire operation, released strategically across multiple platforms. Their carefully constructed social media empire began to crumble. Followers turned against them as evidence of their scams spread. Former clients came forward with their stories of loss and deception. The perfect family image they had crafted shattered completely. The final confrontation came at Grandpa's house. They had already moved in, treating my inheritance as their own. I arrived with a locksmith and proper documentation, watching as Mom's face contorted with rage through the window. "You can't do this to us," she screamed as I entered what was now legally my property. "We're your family. We've already moved everything in." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. Just days ago, they had thrown my belongings onto the lawn. Family? I kept my voice steady, channeling Grandpa's calm during tense negotiations. "Let me show you what family means." I played a compilation video on my tablet, footage of them mocking Dad's old-fashioned investment approaches, using his death for marketing, planning to steal my college fund. Marcus tried one last manipulation. "Think about your mother's reputation. Once this gets out, she'll never recover in the influencer community." His threat sounded hollow now, his confident facade cracking. "You should have thought about that before using my father's death to scam people," I replied, sending a prepared email with one click. "By the way, that evidence is now in the hands of federal investigators. Your followers might want to know about your history of investment fraud." Jessica's carefully curated social media presence imploded first. Her followers, mostly young aspiring investors, turned against her as evidence of her counterfeit goods operation spread. Her attempts to paint me as the villain backfired spectacularly when her own chat logs leaked, revealing her contempt for her followers. Mom's transformation was complete, from grieving widow to social media star to exposed fraud. As she packed her designer bags, tears streaming down her face, she made one last attempt. "Your father would be ashamed of you," she spat. I stood in Grandpa's study, my study now, surrounded by the books and papers that had prepared me for this moment. "No, Mom. Dad taught me to protect myself and others from people like Marcus. And that's exactly what I'm doing." The evidence I had gathered went beyond just their social media scams. Marcus's investment scheme had targeted vulnerable people, including retired seniors and struggling single parents. The documentation I provided to authorities was comprehensive and damning. As they loaded their belongings into their car, I watched from the window, just as I had watched them throw my things onto the lawn days earlier. The symmetry was perfect, the justice poetic. Years of financial education had taught me more than just market analysis, it had taught me how to fight back. The last thing I saw was Mom's face in the car's rear window, a mixture of fury and disbelief. She had underestimated me, seeing only the quiet teenager who logged everything in her leather notebook. She never understood that every entry, every document, every recorded conversation was building toward this moment. They drove away, leaving me alone in the house that had been my sanctuary. In the study, I opened Dad's notebook, now filled with evidence that would ensure they could never harm another person with their financial schemes. The final entry would be their departure, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in the newly renovated office of Chen Investment Advisory. The leather notebook that started everything sat prominently on my desk, now accompanied by framed securities licenses and regulatory certifications. What began as Dad's gift had evolved into something far more significant than any of us could have imagined. The impact of Marcus's exposure was more widespread than I initially anticipated. Federal investigators used my documentation to uncover a network of investment fraud spanning 12 states, with estimated losses exceeding $50 million. His exclusive investment club had particularly targeted vulnerable retirees, single parents, and recent immigrants, promising them impossible returns that left many financially devastated. I made it my mission to ensure every victim's story was heard and addressed. Working alongside regulatory authorities, I helped establish a comprehensive recovery fund using assets seized from Marcus's operations. The process was complex, requiring all the skills Dad and Grandpa had taught me about financial forensics and asset tracing. "Your grandfather would be proud," said Mr. Harrison, Grandpa's old colleague who now served on our advisory board. "He always said you had a gift for seeing through financial smokescreens." We worked together to develop a victim support program that went beyond just financial recovery, offering counseling and financial education to help prevent future victimization. Jessica's influencer empire crumbled spectacularly, but its collapse revealed an unexpected opportunity. Her former followers, mostly young aspiring investors, became the first participants in our financial literacy program. "Investment isn't about flashy promises or viral trends," I explained in our inaugural workshop. "It's about understanding fundamentals, practicing patience, and maintaining ethical standards." The Chen Financial Education Center, housed in what was once Grandpa's study, quickly became a beacon for those seeking legitimate investment knowledge. We offered free workshops, one-on-one counseling, and online resources designed to help people identify and avoid investment scams. The waiting list grew longer each week as word spread about our success in preventing fraud. Mom's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate as their situation deteriorated. Her messages arrived like clockwork during financial difficulties, each one proposing elaborate schemes for family reconciliation that inevitably centered around money. I archived them all in a special folder labeled Lessons Learned, a reminder of why I chose this path. Our most impactful initiative was the Early Warning System, a program I developed using the patterns I documented during Marcus's scheme. We created a database of common fraud indicators, training financial advisors and bank employees to recognize potential scams before significant losses occurred. In its first year, the system helped prevent an estimated $30 million in potential fraud losses. The house became more than just a residence or education center. I converted the West Wing into a research facility where we analyzed emerging investment scams and developed prevention strategies. My grandfather believed in protecting people through knowledge, I would tell visitors. This building represents that legacy in action. One of our most satisfying cases involved a group of elderly investors who'd nearly fallen victim to a scheme remarkably similar to Marcus's. The scammer had even studied his techniques, but our intervention came just in time. "You saved our retirement," a 72-year-old former teacher told me, tears in her eyes. "I almost lost everything I'd worked for." The Maya Chen Ethical Finance Scholarship, funded by part of my inheritance, began supporting students committed to fraud prevention and financial ethics. "We're not just creating investment advisors," I explained at the first awards ceremony. "We're building a network of financial guardians." Professional recognition came swiftly. Financial regulators regularly consulted our research, and I found myself testifying before congressional committees on investment fraud prevention. Each appearance was an opportunity to honor Dad and Grandpa's teachings, turning their wisdom into public policy. Our company specialized in what I called protective finance, combining fraud detection, prevention, and education. The skills I'd developed documenting Marcus's schemes became the foundation for a comprehensive approach to financial security. We didn't just help people invest, we taught them to protect themselves. The most unexpected development was the formation of a support network among fraud survivors. What began as a victim recovery program evolved into a community of advocates. Former victims became mentors, sharing their experiences to help others avoid similar traps. Their resilience and determination to help others touched me deeply. One morning, I received an email that brought tears to my eyes. A former associate of Marcus wrote, "Your work didn't just expose a fraud, it saved me from becoming him." I was starting to believe that deception was just how modern finance worked. "You showed me there's another way." These messages became increasingly common, each one validating the path I'd chosen. Looking back now, from my office overlooking the city, I understand that Dad's gift of a leather notebook and Grandpa's patient lessons were more than just financial education. They were preparing me for a mission they somehow knew would come, equipping me with tools to not only protect myself but to help others. The last update I received about Mom and Marcus came through industry channels. They had relocated to a small town, their social media empire in ruins. Jessica attempted to rebuild her influence under various aliases, but her reputation followed her everywhere. Their perfect digital facade had crumbled, revealing the truth they tried so hard to hide. The leather notebook found a permanent home in a display case in our education center's main hall, alongside Dad's original investment guides and Grandpa's market analysis tools. Every successful defense against fraud starts with documentation, I tell our students, pointing to these treasured items. Your greatest weapon is knowledge combined with integrity. My father was right, money isn't just about wealth. And Grandpa was right too, knowledge truly is power. Together, they taught me that the greatest investment you can make is in protecting others from those who would abuse their trust. That's a return that no market can measure, and no social media influence can match. As I write this final entry in a new notebook, I realize that our work is just beginning. Each day brings new challenges, new schemes to uncover, and new people to protect. But thanks to the lessons my father and grandfather taught me, and the strength I found in standing up to those who tried to destroy me, I'm ready for whatever comes next. The view from my window shows a city full of people who need protection from financial predators. Dad and Grandpa showed me the way. Now it's my turn to light the path for others.